Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Rough Rider, where every week I talk writing, self-publishing, and living in a barely literate society. Today, I'm going to be talking about improving your writing routine. So the question is, how can you be more consistent and how can you optimize the time that you spend writing? Well, the biggest thing is that you can't just find time to write, you really need to make time to write. As an indie author or a self-publishing author just starting out, you probably have a day job. And there's only so many hours in a day, so you're gonna have to decide when it is that you're going to write, and you really need to carve time out for that. You're gonna have to dedicate some time to work, some time to writing, and then obviously make time for yourself just to relax. So settling into a sustainable and reliable writing routine is really gonna help you with meeting your writing goals and then with actually finishing your work in progress instead of having to work on and off on it for months or maybe even years. So what are 5 ways that you can optimize your writing routine? So the first thing that you can do to optimize your writing routine is to pick a specific time of day that you're going to be writing. You're going to want to schedule time either every day or at least a few days a week. It doesn't necessarily have to be every day, but you do want it to be consistent. If you pick a specific time of day that you're going to be writing, so let's say you pick like 5 p.m. Every day you're going to take time to write at 5 p.m. Over time, you'll psychologically start to associate that time of day with being creative. And even though this wouldn't be a conscious thing, unconsciously, you're going to start getting acclimated to being creative around that time. And then once you've been doing it for long enough, you'll find that you'll really start to feel more creative and have that inspiration flow around that time of day that you have been consistently writing. After a few weeks, it'll become second nature to you, and it's not going to feel like you're building up a new habit or it's a chore or anything. You can actually just put a reminder in your phone or an alarm so that way every day or whatever amount of days that you decide you're going to do this, you never forget that you have to write. You're going to have an alert come up saying, okay, it's time to write now. Ultimately, just picking a certain time of day and sticking to it, or at least around that time, things happen. You can't always do it exactly 5 p.m., but doing it around that time is going to really help with psychologically setting you up for being creative and really just having a consistent routine. So the second thing that you can do to optimize your writing routine is to set quantifiable goals. So now that you know what time of day you're going to be writing, you need to decide what you're going to accomplish in that time that you've set aside for writing. You'll want to set a well-defined and quantifiable goal. So something that you can really tell when you have met it. It shouldn't be something sort of subjective or more descriptive. Generally, you can either go by word count or time spent writing. If you decide to go with time spent writing, personally, that is what I do. I set an hour every day that I'm going to write. I don't always stick to it, I'll be honest, but I try. You can set any amount of time that you want. It could be as little as 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Anything is better than nothing. So as long as you're being consistent with it, then you're building up a good habit. If you are going with time spent writing as your goal, then you don't necessarily have to write any specific amount during the time that you're spending writing. Let's say for me, I'm writing for an hour. One day I might be particularly productive and write pages and pages and pages of stuff, but then another day I might not be and I might get very little accomplished. But I did spend that time at least trying to write and building up that habit and really telling myself like, okay, I need to do this now. If you're trying to finish a work in progress by a certain date, like if you have a deadline, then time spent writing is probably not the best way to go in terms of goals. You'll probably want to do a word count goal. So if you do a word count, then that means that in that time that you set aside to write, you want to write a certain number of words in that period. It's really hard to predict how long that'll take. Over time, you might find that you're able to write a certain amount per day, like on average. So you might be able to get a basic idea, but you'll never be able to really predict exactly how long it'll take you to write those X number of words. One day it might not take you that long at all because you might feel very, very creative and very inspired. Another day it might feel like pulling teeth and it will take a lot longer to meet that word count goal. So again, if you have a deadline that you need to meet for a work in progress, then a word count goal is probably your best way to go because at least you know you're writing a certain chunk of this every time that you're writing. However, if you are doing a word count goal, then you don't know how long it could take you. So if you only have an hour to set aside a day for this and to dedicate to writing, then I wouldn't go with a word count goal because you don't know how long it'll take you to complete that number of words. So the third thing that you can do to optimize your writing routine is to have a specific place that you write. This is good psychologically because just like setting a certain time of day to write, you'll start to kind of subconsciously associate that with creativity. It's the same way with where you write. If you have a certain place in your house, or you go to like a quiet cafe or something to write, or a library, then you'll start to become more creative, or at least more open to inspiration when you're in that space. Ideally, you want to pick some place where you can get away from distractions. So personally, I just write in my room. The living room can get a little busy with the amount of dogs that we have running around. But wherever you choose, it should be some place where you really can't get too distracted with anything. So picking a place to write really is like setting a ritual that kind of preps your brain into being creative when you're in that certain place at that certain time. Now, the fourth thing that you're going to want to do to optimize your writing routine, and this goes along with what I just said, is to really remove distractions. So this is pretty intuitive, but it's also really important, and it's not something that you want to ignore. You should turn off your phone or just mute it for the amount of time that you're going to be setting aside to write. I would also isolate myself as much as possible from the internet. If whatever you're writing requires you to do some online research, then I would do that ahead of time and just kind of have all those notes available to reference instead of having to actually go online, because you will always face that temptation to kind of stray and go onto social media or Wikipedia browse or anything. Like, those temptations will be there. Honestly, you could invest in some noise-proof headphones. I have those and I find them really helpful for just tuning out everything around me. And finally, just make sure that your family and friends understand that for you, writing really is a job. So this is your livelihood that you're talking about. So for you, when you set aside this time to write, they should think of this like work. And the same way that they wouldn't be interrupting you at work, at your day job, they really should respect your need for space when you're writing. So the fifth thing that you can do to optimize your writing routine is to be realistic. Be realistic about your goals, be realistic about your personal abilities. Don't overdo it. Make sure you give yourself a break every so often. You don't have to write every single day. You could write 4 days a week, 5 days a week, and take the weekend off, or just take a day off every couple of days. And remember that even if you are trying to write every day, it is okay to miss a day. Try not to miss 2 days in a row, but if you do miss a day, it's fine. Life happens. You don't need to beat yourself up over it. And you should consider your own personal writing style when you're thinking about what's realistic for you. If you're a slow writer, that's totally fine. You don't need to make excuses about it or explain it to anyone. You just write slow, and that's okay. But if that's the case, you probably don't want to go with something like a word count goal that is too high, because you'll find that you have to invest ridiculous amounts of time just to meet that goal. And what you'll end up doing is just kind of burning yourself out. You'll run out of creative energy, you'll get real tired, you'll get frustrated, and you'll just kind of lose interest. You can only write so much before you run out of steam. So you don't want to overexert yourself and work too hard. If you do overwork yourself, you're going to start finding it hard to actually stick to your routine. And the whole idea is to be consistent with your writing, and this will help a lot with actually improving it. It's much better to start slow and start with smaller goals and kind of work your way up as you get stronger with sticking to that routine and with just writing consistently. So personally, when it comes to optimizing your writing routine, I recommend downloading a habit builder or a habit tracker app for your smartphone. There's a lot of free ones that you could pick from, and they're really helpful with building new habits. So it helps you to keep track of how often you're doing things and when you're doing them. And you'll find that over maybe 2 or 3 weeks that it really starts to become second nature, and you don't have to put in the kind of mental energy that you used to really drive yourself into doing this. So if you guys have any personal habits that you follow that really help you with sticking to a writing routine or just making your writing routine more productive, please put it in the comments. I'd be really interested to see what you do. So for a longer take on this topic, you can check out my blog. There's a link in the description. And if you found this helpful, be sure to like and subscribe, follow me on social media. And as always, thank you for watching. God bless.